I thought. There it is. That voice is the chairman, not me. Good evening. It's 5:30 p.m. on Tuesday, June 7th, 2022, and this regular meeting of the Sandpoint Planning and Zoning Commission is now called to order in council chambers at City Hall, 1123 West Lake Street, Sandpoint, Idaho. For the record, I am Chairman John Hastings presiding. Also present are Commissioners Mose Dunkel, Slate Camp, Luke Ahmet, Ben McGran, and Amelia Boyd. Commissioner Forrest Chuck is absent. We will now recite the Pledge of Allegiance, if everyone will please stand.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Are there any general announcements for the commissioners, from the commissioners, or from city staff?
No.
Seeing none. Next on the agenda is approval of meeting minutes. I will entertain a motion to approve the minutes from the May 17th, 2022 meeting.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes and the minutes are approved. New business. The first item on the agenda this evening is a public hearing on a request for approval of a conditional use permit for two mixed-use buildings, each with a footprint exceeding 15,000 square feet in the Commercial B zoning district at the northeast corner of North Boyer Avenue and Chestnut Street. This site is legally described as lots 7, 8, and 9, Milltown Park First Edition, Section 15, Township 57 North, Range 2 West, Bonner County, Idaho. A notice of the public hearing was published in the Bonner County Daily Bee, the city's newspaper of record, on May 17th, 2022. The order and procedure for the public hearing will be as follows. Explanation of the subject of the public hearing by city staff. Presentation by the applicant. Please note that commissioners should address their questions to the applicant at that time. Opening of the public hearing, at which time the public may provide testimony. Questions should be asked of those testifying at that time. The order for those providing testimony will be as follows. First, in favor, second, neutral, and third, opposed. The applicant's rebuttal testimony, at which time final questions may be asked of the applicant. Please note that if new facts are elicited during rebuttal, the public may be given an opportunity to comment on any new facts. Then we will close the public hearing and the commission will deliberate. No information may be provided after the hearing has been closed, with questions directed only to city staff during the deliberations. Before we proceed any further, I would like to ask for confirmation from each of the commissioners. Please that you have had no ex parte contact and have had no conflict of interests as pertains to this request. Take a roll on that. Mose?
None.
Slate?
None.
Luke?
None.
Ben?
None.
Amelia?
None.
And I have none either. I will now yield the floor to City Planner Amy Tweeten for an introduction of this request and explanation of the application.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Again, this is a public hearing on case number PCUP 220002, a requested conditional use permit at the northeast corner of Chestnut Street and North Boyer Avenue. The property is in the Commercial B zoning district. The subject site is an approximately 4-acre vacant lot, and that is highlighted in blue on the right image. A conditional use permit is required by section 9417 of the Sandpoint City Code for buildings exceeding a footprint exceeding 15,000 square feet. The proposed development includes 2 4-story mixed-use buildings, each with a footprint of approximately 22,400 square feet. The ground floors are a mix of non-residential uses fronting North Boyer, and the remainder of the space residential units, and there are 67 residential units per building. The site plan that was provided shows that commercial space along North Boyer Avenue. The site has 172 parking spaces required according to the uses. 204 spaces are provided. The landscaping elements will be further evaluated at site plan review, but appear to be met. And the commercial B district required site elements along North Boyer Avenue that district requires are incorporated. The floor plans for the buildings on the left is the ground floor plan, again with the commercial space fronting North Boyer Avenue, and then there's some residential buildings to the back. And then the upper floors are all, each floor has 20 units per floor. And there are 2 buildings with this same footprint layout. The perspectives have been provided along North Boyer that shows the facade and how it's broken up to make it the mass of the building less the roof lines. And again, that's storefront glass along North Boyer that is required. And then there is the plaza between the 2 buildings on the lower right image. The elevations shown here are the ends of the building. So along Chestnut Street is on top. And then at the north end of the site, as you're coming south on Boyer and crossing the railroad tracks is what you would see on the lower image. Again, with the application, the applicant provided a statement regarding how the development meets the 9 requirements of a CUP. I will not read the list, but these are the 9 criteria that need to be met for a conditional use permit to be granted. And to ensure that the required 9 criteria of a conditional use permit are met, Section 996 of the code allows the commission to add conditions to an approval that address but are not limited to the following. Conditions minimizing adverse impact on other development, controlling the sequence and timing of a development, controlling the duration of a development, assuring that development is maintained properly, designating the exact location and nature of development, requiring the provision for on-site or off-site public facilities or services, and requiring more restrictive standards than those generally required in an ordinance. As detailed in the staff report, the site appears to meet the requirements of the commercial B district, but will be thoroughly reviewed for compliance with parking, landscaping, and design standard requirements of the commercial B district at the time of building permit application. To ensure compliance with the conditional use criteria, staff recommends the following conditions be added to any motion for approval. First is to complete the traffic impact study that is currently underway. And in consideration of city code and the transportation plan, no access should be provided along North Boyer Avenue, which is an arterial, unless the traffic impact study indicates that it would not be detrimental to traffic flow. Applicant shall adjust the building location to accommodate the additional right-of-way dedication along Boyer Avenue and Chestnut, and the alternative to additional right-of-way on Chestnut would be posting no parking. An acceptable traffic study approved by the city may serve as justification to omit one or both right-of-way conditions. Additional right-of-way is anticipated to result in reconstruction of pedestrian facilities. This condition does not modify the setback requirements. The applicant shall pay extraordinary fees, if any, as determined through the traffic study review process and ultimately determined by City Council. Pursuant to Section 9967 of the code, once the CUP is approved, work shall commence within 1 year following the date of approval and shall be diligently pursued, or said approval and permit shall be rendered null, void, and of no right or recourse. The duration of the development shall be completed and certificates of occupancy issued within 3 years of conditional use permit issuance. Due to the proximity of the development to the railroad tracks, exterior walls shall have a sound transmission class of not less than 50 or not less than 45 if field tested for airborne noise. Penetrations or openings in construction assemblies shall be sealed, lined, insulated, or otherwise treated to maintain the required ratings. A short plat will be required to combine the existing lots of record before certificate of occupancy. Non-residential use on the ground floor level is required by the commercial B zoning district. Absent ground floor non-residential use, a rezone would be required prior to building permit issuance. The conditional use permit does not run with the land and is specific to this applicant. Based on an environmental covenant associated with the property, any extraction of groundwater from under the property for human consumption is prohibited without prior written approval from the DEQ. In addition, prior to construction, the applicant shall contact DEQ to discuss any specific site activities that may need environmental monitoring or material that results in special handling or disposal due to recent groundwater investigation findings. Detailed analysis will occur throughout the design process. The analysis of layout, design, engineering, and other factors may result in the need to revise a variety of plan elements. In addition, revisions may be necessary at the time of construction improvement plans. If city staff determines the revisions are substantial, these changes will require an amendment to the conditions by the Planning and Zoning Commission. If the city staff determines that the revisions are minor, the changes may be approved, disapproved, or approved with modifications administratively. The authority to make the determination of when a revision is minor versus substantial is the city's. And no design waivers have been requested or approved for this development. Any future requests for design standards waivers in accordance with section 9423H11 are subject to review and approval by the Planning and Zoning Commission and may result in an amendment to the terms of the conditional use permit. And after receiving public comment and deliberation, the commission may approve with conditions, or deny the conditional use permit. That is all I have.
Do commissioners have any questions for staff at this time?
I have a question related to the traffic study. So why are we against having them go onto Boyer? They have looks like their parking lot at the north there goes on to Boyer.
Again, because it's a principal arterial road, we try to limit access points onto arterial roads.
So if you don't allow them to access there, isn't that creating a dead end at that parking point? And for fire truck, say there was a fire in that corner and the fire truck needed to get down there and there's parking, isn't that going to create an issue?
Not on this site, specific to this site, because it is, the building is fronting Boyer. The fire access they could access the building from Boyer itself.
Okay.
Quick question. The 4 stories, is that, what other 4-story structures do we have? And is that an issue at all for public safety or not?
It is not an issue.
That's not an issue that's come up at all. Gotcha.
I believe the apartments behind us.
Are those 4-story?
Okay. At least some of them are 4-story, okay. Yes.
And then Amy, I have a question on the geotech. It talked about there's a specific type of foundation required based off of the soil conditions in that area. Do we know if their plans have addressed that?
The applicant would probably have to answer that question.
Okay.
Commissioners, any other questions for staff? Okay. I will now ask the applicant for a presentation.
Do I have a formal process here? I'm Todd Butler with Forte Architecture and Planning, and I am representing the owners on this project. I think what I'll do is just touch on the 9 items that we needed to meet, and then just open it up to any questions that you may have. a brief history on this. We are currently wrapping up a building very similar to this in Missoula right now for the same clients. And that's how we got to this point, is we had been working on that for some time, and they're looking at other properties. And they said, well, you know, what can we put on that property up in Sandpoint? And I just took the building we were working on and I said, well, you know, this fits, and they're excited about the product. And so we started looking into the zoning and everything else. And it was a really good fit for this zone and this context area, in our opinion. And again, the only requirement that we ran across was, because of its size, we had to go through this conditional use process. So that's why we're here today, is to go over that. So that was the first order of business. Just due to exceeding the 15,000 square feet, as Amy said, we're probably a little over 22,000 square foot footprint for each one of these buildings. The plan development will be in accordance with the general objectives outlined in the comprehensive and city codes, and strives to exceed objectives where applicable. We're in the context area 5, and I just wanted to outline a few of the, our project provides over 10,000 of square feet of space between the two buildings that would be non-residential space, with storefront features and entries addressing Boyer Avenue. The remainder of the building is dedicated to residential, and that's supported in the comprehensive plan under goal LU1 efficient land use. It encourages housing above ground floor retail in CA5 districts. Goal LU2 traditional patterns encourages mixed land uses in the CA5 areas, and encourages attached housing types in and around downtown. Goal LU3 downtown vitality encourages residential use in the downtown area. Goal H1 housing variety, we provide, paragraph A provides housing diversity. C reduces transportation costs with location near daily needs. E strongly encourages housing above retail and CA5 districts. A great example of that daily needs is Super One is within walking distance, so is a really good fit for that area. Goal T1 walkability looks to locate houses in the CA5 area, reduces visual prominence of automobiles in parking areas. As you'll see, all of ours is going to be tucked behind the buildings. Develop storefronts and streetscapes character. We will be endeavoring to do that. In addition, our plan will meet all required setbacks, lot coverage requirements, building height requirements, landscape and open space requirements. We provide for vehicular and pedestrian circulation within the site. We will meet the building design standards as dictated in the city code, specifically 9216 building design standards, 9217 special standards for buildings exceeding 15,000 square feet, 9218 special standards for parking and loading areas. Item 3, the plan development will be designed, constructed, operated, and maintained to be harmonious and provide the intended character appropriate to the general facility. The property north of our development is vacant. The railroad runs through that area. Directly east of us is 2 to 3 story multifamily residential. The property south of us is vacant, and the land west has a few multifamily units at the very southern end of it, and is vacant adjacent to the mill. Item 4, through maintaining proper setbacks, landscape buffers, on-site services for stormwater, garbage, and snow removal, as well as exceeding parking requirements, our planned development will not be hazardous or disturbing to existing neighborhood. Number 5, the planned development is within city limits served by all essential public services. Utilities are provided in surrounding streets with overhead power located along the west property line. Parking, stormwater, and garbage collection requirements will be provided on site with required police and fire protection access. Number 6, the plan development will not create excessive additional requirements at public cost for public services or utilities, and will provide housing options within the community which can promote or expand the economic welfare of the community. Item 7, the plan development will not involve uses, activities, processes, material, equipment, or conditions of operations that will be detrimental to any person, property, or the general welfare by reason of traffic noise, smoke, fumes, glare, or odors. Number 8, the project is accessed. It is actually surrounded on 3 sides with existing streets. Commissioner McGran brought up a point about Boyer, and we can talk about that a little bit more, but we adjusted our site plan before this to show how we could accommodate just access off of the other 2 streets, as well as if we were impacted by widening Boyer and or Chestnut, how we could still fit within this. So the site plan that you're looking at accommodates all of those things, even though those are not actual conditions right now. And the final item number 9, the existing property does not have any natural, scenic, or historic features of major importance that will be lost or damaged in the development of this property. So if we could go to the site plan, I'll just go over it really quickly. Like I said, we had a traffic study done, and it raised some bullet points that we know that we have to get a full impact study. Trip generation letter is what we had done. We know that we have to get the full traffic impact study, but the generation letter did raise some red flags as to, you know, this many more trips a day, and that it may be a concern on Boyer. So I adjusted right at the end, but I'm leaving it as an optional entry because I still think it would be, if it can be accommodated, we would like to take advantage of that. But we still have plenty of access off of 6th and Chestnut. So I think that'll work out really well. We've tucked all of our parking and all of that behind, so Boyer Avenue will look very similar to other downtown locations, even though this would be the edge of, I think, in my opinion, the edge of the downtown by far. But you know, it definitely, the lot south of this, you know, could be developed in a similar fashion at some point. So I think this will be kind of a nice anchor to it. And we endeavored to really with the detailed requirements of the code. If we can go to one of the perspectives, I can just show a couple quick things. You know, you can see that we have the ribbon of storefront glass along the bottom. We've also set this up to be very flexible, where that's storefront glass with primarily a single entry planned right now at the center of each building. The space, the non-residential use space, is set up to accommodate 4 separate spaces, each one that could then have its own separate entry. There's a lot of flexibility built into that. And it's again, a part of the code that was requested. So we feel pretty comfortable, or very comfortable, that we can meet all of those requirements in the future as needed. And you know, the challenge too with things like this is you never know really what the need's going to be until it comes. So primarily we've set this up to be to look at use primarily by people that live in the complex, but that doesn't preclude that it could be used for commercial endeavors or other things. So there's a lot of flexibility built into the design for that. I don't think I have a whole lot more to discuss. I just open it up to questions if you guys have any. Go from there.
Thank you. Commissioners, any questions for the applicant?
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
Okay. I think you answered my question. One of my questions in reviewing the packet was if there was going to be rear entrances to the commercial spaces from the parking lot. But from what I understand, that you said they go through the middle in between the buildings to access the front and only one entry.
So what, and again, you know, there's flexibility in everything. What is set up right now is from that center courtyard between the 2 buildings, there are accesses that you could access the commercial space from there. But primarily, I strive to provide a separation between the residential that's behind and the commercial that's in, or the non-residential in front. So right now, you are correct. You would walk to Boyer Avenue and then go to entries that are on Boyer.
Okay.
But there is still from the courtyard, there is especially on the perspective that I'm showing there, we have a major entry on that corner because we were looking at that as using as a sales and rec room, you know, office for the complex.
And then according to the plans, preliminary plans, you have about up to six commercial spaces in each building. Did I read that correctly?
If that's what was in the plans, yes. I had 4 in my head, but I think it was set up maybe for 6. Yeah.
Okay. That was it for now.
Anybody else?
Yes. You made a comment earlier that the buildings to the east are 2- and 3-story. And just for clarification, we had said earlier that there was 4-story buildings behind it.
I thought one of those was 4 stories, but I could be incorrect.
I think 3 stories is the max over there would be my, it's been a little while since I didn't go by there today again, but I know there's directly to the east, I believe they're more 2-story, and then the southeast, those are 3-story.
Does the association or the organization that you represent manage the buildings behind or to the east?
No.
Separate entities?
Correct.
Okay. As a target demographic for renter in terms of low income, middle income, what does your organization target for these buildings?
I can only speak from example of the other projects, and it's just market. You know, it's a market income. I can't say anything more than that. And I do believe there might be some members in Zoom. So if that gets opened up later and they want to address any of that, but I don't know if there's a way to know that if there's members on Zoom.
There's no one on Zoom.
Left hanging. Yeah. So I would just say market, you know, kind of what they can get out of them.
So maybe even defined as workforce housing?
Well, I think by the nature of apartments, you get that. And I will say this, you know, again, we've got a unit mix here of 1, 2, and 3 bedroom units. But again, just in side conversations with one of the primary partners, you know, he's going, I really think we should look at more 1 bedroom units. And again, there's these discussions that are continually going on, and they're trying to decide what's the market. And, you know, definitely you're going to have a more cost-effective unit, probably with a 1 bedroom. But then that it's just a matter of that, is there that need, or is it more of a need of families? You know, so we have 3 different unit types that we can work in different capacities. So I think there will just be continual market research on this for them. But if we could go back to the floor plans, Amy, I think just back 1 page or 2, 1 or 2 pages.
Sorry.
That's okay.
Yeah, we're done.
Then again,
All right, floor plans.
right
Here we
there.
go.
Yeah. So you can see there right now, historically, the most marketable seem to be 2 bedroom, 2 bath units. So when we do our initial planning, that's the majority of our units. The ground floor, you can see we have a 3 bedroom, 2 bath, 10 2 bedroom, 2 baths, and 2 1 bedroom, 1 bath. And that pretty much carries up above. We have 2 3 bedroom, 2 baths, and 14 2 2s and 2 1 1s. So, but again, that I think that there may be, we're going to have to make some of those final decisions at the end.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Sure. Yes. So on the parking, what's the ratio mix? Is that based off of a certain mixed use calculation?
What we try to do is provide more parking than the code requires. Right. And so we're exceeding that. I know the theory is trying to get people to walk more and ride bikes more and those kind of things. And I think one of the trends I see, and I'm working in a lot of different states and a lot of different jurisdictions, and I see those parking requirements going down. And is it 1 space, Amy? Is it 1 space per unit here?
Right, and you're allowed to go over the minimum for residential, but not for commercial. So basically, the parking is, they took the number of units times the code requirement. And then.
Those one per unit.
Yeah, so basically what I strive for is 1.5 per unit. And I think we're really close to that. But earlier on one of our plans, I think we had a number like 172 or 175, somewhere around there is required. And we're providing like 225 or 200 and some. And for me, that gave two different amounts of flexibility. It gave more parking residentially because most people are 2-car families, it seems like. Or if you have a roommate, both of you have a car. So one just is kind of impractical, but it also gives a flexibility that on the commercial side or the non-residential side of things, that if that was a use and we needed more parking, I think there's some flexibility in that parking lot and the facility to designate more, you know, without crossing any boundaries or discriminating against people that live there. So
okay.
That was kind of the thought process.
Cool. On the snow storage, so are you planning for that? I can't tell from the plans, is there a curb? Are you planning for a shallow curb to allow a vehicle to push snow over?
I haven't worked through a lot of the details. We just have designated some different spaces on the site that there could be snow storage. You'll see that we have like a sport court on the southeast corner down there. And I always think that's kind of a good way to plan because if needed, that's a good place to pile snow. You don't get too many Hoosiers anymore that are out playing basketball in the middle of winter. So, but anyway, that's a nice overflow. And then we've got those two large areas in the detention swells in the middle that I think we would like to really look at, you know, where they have sidewalks on the inside, the other side they don't. And I think there could be a policy or something pulled together where they, you know, rope off an access point, you know, a couple parking spaces during the winter, and then that would provide them access to push snow or take a loader and dump snow in those areas.
Okay. On the STC rating, is that something that you guys were planning for already, or is that something that you're having to change your plans to accommodate?
You know, I was actually taken by surprise on that a little bit because it seemed like an interest, and I would like to go over those if we could, the suggestions, but it's not a big problem for us. In multifamily housing, we have to provide a 50 STC between dwelling units. We have to provide a 50 STC between dwelling units and corridors, or a 50 STC between dwelling units and any other use. So it's not a problem. We don't usually do it on exterior walls, but we can do it as needed. So okay. I don't think it wouldn't be a terrible condition. It just seemed like kind of an odd one to me.
Well, I want it to be, from my perspective, I feel it should be not required for you to do, but it should be something that you want to do out of best practice, right? So
yeah, I mean, you want these to be as comfortable as they can. Yeah. So and again, that's it. I haven't really looked at a wall assembly for exterior. We always do it. We treat it interior. But what's interesting about this building type, when you get into 4 stories, you go to a type A construction, which is 1 hour construction. And if you're using gypboard as part of that, that's a great sound absorbent, you know, that's part of an assembly anyway. So I don't think it'll be too hard to hit that.
Typically your windows are going to be your weak point.
You know, typically everything is a double paned, low E, you know, even the cheapest windows anymore provide a pretty good, yeah, but it could be. But I don't think they really, when you're doing an STC, I don't think they're even looking at openings within that. They're just testing the assembly of the wall.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not sure if now's the time to ask Amy this, but I'm going to be interested how does the city of Sandpoint actually enforce that? Is there somebody who's going to go get a sound meter and take that rating at the building inspection process?
I'm assuming the building, it will be reviewed at the building plan stage, what materials are being used.
Okay. So typically with any sound rating that I have to provide, because again, I told you in multifamily, they have a lot of those requirements. We provide data a wall type that has a proven, study to it.
Yeah.
So that's usually what's accepted by building departments.
Okay. And then just out of curiosity, is the blue in the courtyard there, is that a water feature?
Just looking at what we could do. So there's a lot of requirements in this zone. That's why I outlined those 3 different parts of the city code. But one of them is we have to provide X number of features along Boyer. And one of them is like an interior courtyard. So we were just going, okay, this is not a huge courtyard, but what could it be? So yeah, we were showing a water feature there and just thinking of like a little plaza area. And I think it would be, I think it would be a nice feature. So it's just, there's going to be some kind of courtyard there with some sort of focal point or feature. So we have a little bit of a challenge because between those 2 buildings, we have about a 1.5 to 2 foot drop. So that courtyard's going to be that transition through there.
Cool. Oh, I like it. Good job.
You mentioned the building in Missoula.
Yeah.
Is it the same size scale?
It is on a much smaller lot.
Okay. I'm just curious about the start to finish timeline when you proceed with a project like this.
That was another concern of mine. And I would like to, like I said, go back and visit some of those conditions. So we are literally trying to submit that building for permit this year. But with the excessive workload that my small office has had, we've been on that project for close to a year to get it to that point. I think we have close to 200 drawings in the set. And so I don't know if that's a standard, the 1-year limitation. We will be further ahead on this project because we'll get to reuse a lot of what we did on the other one. But the 2 timeframes that I was concerned with that were outlined by the planning department was what constitutes, could you go to those points, Amy?
Was it on the first?
Go back 1 page. So work shall commence within 1 year. What does that mean? Does that, if we're showing progress or if we're submitting things, does that count as work towards the project? If we're in for permits, it took 3, I pulled out my narrative here and I submitted this 3 months ago. It took 3 months to get here. I don't know how long permitting will be, and I know it's a busy time everywhere. So I'm kind of concerned with the time limits. The other one was the duration of the development shall be completed within 3 years. This is one of the things the owners are looking at right now. They're trying to make a decision. Should we build one and see how the market treats it? Should we build both of them at the same time? These are not going to be cheap buildings. So, that's one of the things my concern was, this will be definitely, I would guess once construction starts, not knowing even how long it's going to take to get through the drawings and permitting. But, I'm sure this is going to be a year or more in the build of one. So I'm just concerned about the 3-year limitation also. So both of those limitations, I don't know if there's a way to put wording in there that allows some flexibility, or if that can come back to the planning, if those have to be a part of the conditions, because those are just recommendations, correct?
Number 2 is not a recommendation, that's city code.
Yeah.
Okay, that's what I was curious about. So what does that mean? Work shall commence. Does architectural, engineering, all of that work count towards work towards a project? Because it is definitely work.
Yeah, that if you're bumping up against the 1-year time frame, we would have to take a look at what work has been completed and whether or not it meets the requirements. You would have the ability to come in and ask for a renewal or an extension, but that's code. So the Planning Commission doesn't have the ability to negotiate a different term under 9967.
So again, it doesn't say construction shall commence.
Right.
It says work.
We're
so I'm
stuck
just
with the words.
Yeah, I know. The joy of code.
And that's from when city council approves, correct?
No, conditional
No.
use permits are approved by the planning
Planning
commission.
commission.
Ah,
This is it.
okay.
Unless appealed,
Okay.
and I don't see anybody here.
Well, I'm glad I asked.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So if there is a process built in that we can request a continuance or something, that's fine. That's awesome. It's just, again, I know where we've pushed this project in the current planning back until at best a spring of next year, which could easily turn into summer of next year. And I mean, that's where we're at right now. So if this is approved today, a year could be very tight. Just to, again, we would have to be in for permit. I'd hate to even put anybody on the spot of how long it's taking to get projects permitted right now. But the last project I did with the city a couple of years ago took close to a year to get permitted. So, and it was a much smaller project. So again, if there's a process built in that if we're getting close to that 1 year mark, we can ask for an extension and it's not a challenge or against the code to do that. I don't have any, concerns with that.
My understanding is it would not necessarily be an extension. It would just be a new hearing. Is that the way the code is currently set?
I'd have to look at it.
Okay.
Well, and it's out of our purview, so.
You just don't have any flexibility tonight
Right.
because that's.
Yep, we can't change that.
Would you say out of these recommendations, 1 and 2 would be the only required conditions, or were I didn't recognize all of those as being actual required?
These are staff's recommended.
Okay, yeah.
conditions. And again, condition number 3, the intent behind it is clearly the project moves forward.
Correct.
That is not approved and then just languishes and never, we want the construction to occur. So there is that one, it was 3 years. We thought that was fairly reasonable, but that one, the wording could be slightly revised. But the remaining, all of these are staff's recommendations. Number 5 is required. The short plat has to happen.
I understood that, yeah.
6, again, that's just repeating the code. The conditional use permit doesn't run with the land. Then 8 is the DEQ condition. 9 is just saying, we understand minor changes might occur, but anything major would have to come back to the commission. Yeah, and that it's our understanding that no design waivers are being requested.
Correct, yeah.
I have a question about number 6, actually, and then if you can put up the plans of the 2 buildings for me, Amy. That one, yes. Oh, the other one.
Oh,
Floor plan, please.
Floor plans?
So, yes, thank you. So I'm looking at the commercial spaces. Is that just, because I noticed that storage in that top one, correct? And from what number 6 says, it's non-residential use on the ground floor is required. So I imagine that will change.
So again, we were at this level of design, we were looking at presenting something that we felt would meet the code and try to get past a litmus test without fully knowing what that space was going to be used for. So what I presented there, like for the 2 buildings are a little bit different, but similar. What we're showing there would be like storage units that could be leased by tenants. The larger square in the middle was just set aside for mechanical space and things for the whole facility. The next space down was a common entry into the building that could come into the gym space south of that. And most of that space through the southern end was all dedicated towards workout areas and gym space. And again, with an eye towards, hey, this would be great for the tenants, but it might be good for open it up for the neighborhood too. Mm-hmm. So you don't know until you get into it. And then we have common restrooms. The opposite building, the space that we're showing the gym was, we were setting that aside initially for just a common area, rec area, sales use office, those kind of things. We looked at another storage area in that. But again, in a more detailed set of plans that we address, and in my commentary, it said, you know, you have to provide flexibility in these spaces. And we've built that into all of them. You can see like on the Boyer side, there's a little more orange area. Those are directly below storage units of areas above, but those can be used as individual mechanical heating, heating, cooling units right there. They'll be masked from the public, but they can serve individual spaces. We're planning a crawl space under that whole thing that will allow just flexibility of moving pipes and whatever you need. So I think we want that flexibility. The owners want that flexibility. And again, it's just going to be driven by what Sandpoint, dictates and wants.
Thank you.
Anybody else? I have a couple of questions if nobody else. One is, with the location being so close to the downtown area, I guess I'm wondering if the extra parking spaces are needed, and if there's any flexibility of actually trying, and that would not be anything, commitment, but perhaps one of the objectives as you proceed forward working with city staff would be to remove some parking spaces if it would increase residential and or open space. Do you see that as anything possible with the design in its current phase?
I suppose it's possible. I will just say from my experience as an architect and looking at projects that we shoehorn in, do the maximum on a lot as possible, the negativity is the parking. So the communities are upset because there's a lot of cities that are doing infill projects, right? And I had a project a couple of years ago that was a 12-plex that it ate up 85%, which was allowed of the site. And it was one parking space required per unit. And it's nothing but complaints by the other residential neighbors because everybody's parking on the street, and it's just, so we just try to go above and beyond it a little bit. The nice thing is this is in a location that has bike paths already in the area. Maybe it will attract. I think I've located, each unit is set up with a big enough storage unit that could hold 2 bicycles. And that is a requirement that everybody has to have bicycle parking. But when you start looking at that, 134 units, that's 268 bicycle parking spaces. And I've provided probably an additional 50 on site. So it is definitely going to be geared and friendly towards that. But again, there's other activities, right? I mean, we're on Boyer Avenue. It's pretty quick to get on and head up to Schweitzer. So you could see people that want to live here for those activities, but a car is going to be required for those kind of things. So in answer to your question, yes, if you provide more of something, you can always take it back away. I don't know, Amy, you may know, I don't know what's allowed for parking on those streets around there. I think they allow street parking, but typically with any development, you have to at least accommodate your requirements on site. So
the only reason I brought it up is because of its proximity to downtown, and I envision a lot of young people sharing apartments and biking to their hospitality jobs. That's kind of what I see happening with a project like this. But
yeah. And I think again that would be one of those things that if you really had a project like that was the case. And you saw that whole northern parking strip that was never getting utilized. It'd be like, hey, why don't we just turn this into a park or something? It'd be awesome. So you always have those opportunities. I will say that this lot, I'd have to go back to my drawings and I don't have it with me, but as far as like landscape space and green space and open space, we're exceeding it by quite a bit, the requirements with just this plan even. So
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
I think I have one final question. It's more of a matter of curiosity, but in your industry where things are pretty rapidly changing in the world of electric vehicles, do you see or are you getting requests for designated areas for charging stations?
we're doing it in all of our projects now. And
Including this one?
yeah, we will have those in here. It's going to be a continually shifting, how many do we provide? But I will tell you, it's going to be an impact that the communities are going to start seeing. They take a lot of power. And so it's a great, in my opinion, a great thing, but I had another project that I was working on in Post Falls that was, I want to say 120 townhouse units. And the owners of that wanted to provide electric vehicle charging for all of it. And the power consumption, well, because they're townhouses with their own garage, they're like, hey, let's just provide everybody with a charger. The power requirements were off the charts. You know, and the gear that they would have needed to put in was just so expensive to meet that. So there's going to be some, it'll be, my clients are very forward thinking in that we're putting electric charging stations in each. The one in Missoula right now, we've got planned for 10. So.
Thank you.
Yep.
And how many parking spaces?
In
Missoula, you said 10.
I think there's 100.
Oh.
So
Oh,
10%,
Yeah, that's a lot.
I have one other question here too, and that is, do you see the nature of the non-residential space being exclusively retail, or can it also be office? Could it even be light industrial? What are the?
I want to be real careful. I think it's going to be whatever is allowed by the code. I doubt industrial is allowed, and that would be very hard in a mixed use building, in my opinion, without going into it more. It specifically says non-residential. So that opens it up to a lot of different things. But again, I think with our plan with flexibility, it could be utilized as retail. It could be utilized as different things. And I think it's just going to be, these are pretty big buildings. It's going to be what's driving it, you know, to me, it'd be great to have a little coffee shop or something like that in there. And it, you know, it might just go gangbusters when you got 130 households living above you. It might be just a killer income. So yeah, I think it's just, there will be flexibility built into the design, but we don't have all the answers at this point.
Being Sandpoint, you should probably make room for 4 or 5 drive-through mobile coffee shops.
Sandpoint everywhere, yeah. So.
Do commissioners have any other questions for the applicant at this?
I do not.
No.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We will now prepare to proceed to the public hearing. For those participating on Zoom.
There are none, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. We shall proceed. The public hearing is now open. We will begin with those, we have no one participating remotely. We'll now recognize those in the room who wish to testify in favor, and I see nobody attending. Is there anyone else on Zoom or in the room who wishes to speak in favor? Okay. We'll move on to those who are neutral. Anybody on Zoom or in the room who wishes to speak neutral? And finally, is there anybody in the room or on Zoom who wishes to speak in oppose to this request? Is there anyone who would like to speak on this matter and has not had an opportunity to do so? Just following the rules. Do commissioners have any final questions at this time?
Will you address staff?
Soon, yes, soon. And seeing additional testimony, I'm going to assume that the applicant has no rebuttal at this time. So if there are further questions, I will close the public hearing And at this time, we will deliberate. And now is the information where we can ask questions to city staff.
Mr. Chairman, if I may. Amy, is there a requirement of how much square footage on the ground floor in a building like this that's designated just for commercial? Is it, or, you know, I mean, it's a lot of square footage for one building. So is there a percentage of requirement?
I don't believe so. There's just, they have to provide non-commercial space on the ground floor or non-residential, I'm sorry.
Okay.
But I don't believe there's a specific requirement for square footage.
Okay. And then I have another question. When it comes to number one of that list of staff recommendations, and that 1A in consideration of city code and transportation plan, no access along North Boyer Avenue because of it's an arterial, unless otherwise determined acceptable and approved by the TIS. Would you, I was out there, I went there yesterday, and that driveway that's there is probably less than 100 feet from the railroad track. And what I saw was, you know, anybody pulling out there, there's a train, it's just going to be, traffic's always backed up anyway. So my concern is that if TIS does approve this, I'd find it hard pressed for that even to be a viable access point because of the proximity of the railroad track. So my question to you is, if it is approved or determined by TIS, does that mean that the city, that you guys would have to approve it, or?
The TIS will probably say, you know, my guess is they would put restrictions on any access at that point, like if allowed, maybe right in, right out. But depending what it comes back with, we could still say we disagree and believe that that should not be an access point.
Okay. Okay. I just wanted to make sure if the city was bound to what TIS suggested or approved or whatnot, because from my perspective, by being out there at the site, it just doesn't make sense to me because of the, well, one, the traffic flow once those houses are all complete, and then you have the 2 train tracks. It's just, you know, doesn't make sense to me.
Boyer is going to get more busy for sure.
Yeah. Thank you.
In relation,
Yes.
Sorry.
Okay, go ahead. In relation to the time limitation, I would like to maybe add or adapt that to allow some extensions that could be applied for, if that would be appropriate for us to be able to do that as a condition of approval.
I don't believe that is. We can ask legal
2.
counsel, but
No,
I
for
don't
3.
believe that's within our purvey to
3.
do.
The number,
For number 3.
Number 3.
right, let's see here.
We're saying that they'd need to be completed with certificate of occupancy in 3 years. I'm saying I would recommend that we provide some latitude there and give them extension opportunities.
On the one, that is strictly, that's right from the code.
No. Talking
Oh,
about number 3.
Oh, number 3. Okay.
I'm saying that I would like to provide them some flexibility there that gives them the opportunity to apply for extensions.
So, excuse me. My question was going to be so number 2 is code. I was under the impression number 3 was also code.
No.
No.
it is
Okay.
not.
So we do have flexibility there.
Can we see it again?
Oops.
Yep, over there. No,
Not that one either. There you go.
there, number 3.
That's for the entire project for both buildings, correct?
that could be, well, 3 years for both buildings might be a short time frame. Again, the intent was to get projects going
So
in
there's
that 3 years.
And there's some restrictions on the amount of time that can elapse after a building permit is issued as well. So you could add some language that says they must pull the second building permit within 3 years, have the first building, have a certificate of occupancy issued on the first building and a second permit pulled. Or you could add language that says with an option for an additional 1 year extension at the discretion of staff. If staff denies it, the applicant would always have the ability to appeal that decision to you. So there's some, they always can come back for an extension on number 3 though. Anyways, they could come back and ask for an extension. If the concern is that they may not want to have to bring it back to you, you could put that latitude for an extension in number 3.
I think that's what my concern is I think that they've already, you can tell they've made an investment into it already and they're working on it. Things change in the marketplace, and I think providing them some flexibility that gives them, knowing that they're not in this 3 year window, that they have some greater flexibility there based off of what's happening in the market, I think would be beneficial.
And supply chain issues, which are totally unpredictable right now.
So what are you thinking, a 1 year extension?
I'm thinking is at least 2 1 year extensions. So you could, if you are reaching that 3 year mark, you would say, I'm going to apply for a 1 year extension. If at the end of that 1 year that they still haven't completed it, they have the opportunity to apply for the second 1 year extension. And then if they haven't completed it at that time, there's maybe something going on that we need to look deeper into. Maybe the phase 1 project, the one building is it, and they're not going to do the second building, and we need to address that.
And at the discretion of city staff, as opposed to coming back to planning and zoning?
I believe so, yeah.
And along with that, as long as we're on the same subject, would you see a certificate of occupancy on the first building in that 3 year period, or?
I would provide it some flexibility, but I would not. That would not be my take, is that I would leave it open for the development.
Any further deliberations from commissioners?
Mr. Chairman, I have a question regarding 1A for Amy. At this point, we're pretty much stuck as a commission until the traffic impact study comes back to make that determination. And in regards to the widening or the potential widening of North Boyer Avenue, how does that fit in with the other buildings, especially as we consider that? I understand that for the applicant, is that a condition that will be existing, that already exists, like for Super One? Do they have to deal with that? Are we going to have a weird ballooning of North Boyer and then it will condense back down under this vision?
All developments that are going through the process, we're looking at how much right of way we need in that area. So every development that comes forward, we're looking for at least 60, if not more, on Boyer, because it's a major arterial. So there is the non-motorized facilities plan has, or the multimodal plan, I should say, has plans for how wide all of the streets should be. So every development is evaluated to that.
So to a large extent, it's not necessarily a question of if, but when, especially considering
When
university of play. Yes.
Yeah, that I don't have an answer to.
Okay, thank you.
But let's not forget that the TIS has to be approved by our city engineer and staff. And I think that answers Amelia's previous question.
Thank you.
And we're close to calling for a motion, but before we do that, Could we deliberate just a little bit more on item number 3 and how we'd like to see the wording of that? And then that could be incorporated into the original motion, so we do not have to amend the motion.
Yeah, I think that it's the duration of the development shall be completed and certificates of occupancy issued within 3 years of CUP issuance, with the option for 2 one-year extensions to be approved by staff.
By city staff?
To be approved at the discretion of city staff. Yes.
And if that sounds good to most of us, I am ready to entertain a motion if you all are.
Ready?
Ready.
Why don't you read it?
Got to read the whole thing here.
Can we say?
You can say, you can read the first paragraph if it's a motion to approve. I'm
Yep.
making a giant assumption here. And then you can say, with the conditions as outlined by staff in the staff report with the modification previously articulated. And then I would offer some findings as to this application's compliance with the 9 elements of the CUP.
Repeat the last part.
Sure. Can you put the 9 elements of the? Yes. So offer some findings as to this application's compliance with the requirements for approval of a CUP.
Okay,
Go
here
for
we
it,
go. Mr. Chair,
please.
I have a motion to approve. I move the Sandpoint Planning and Zoning Commission, after consideration of the criteria and relevant standard of Idaho Code in Sandpoint City Code, approve with conditions the request of Sandpoint Opportunity Zone Fund LLC for a conditional use permit for 2 mixed-use buildings, including 134 apartments with footprints of 23,093 square feet each. Site plan dated 5/11/11 and elevations dated 5/5/2022 at the northeast corner of North Boyer Avenue and Chestnut Street, parcel RPS 385-1000007AA, and more specifically described as lots 7, 8, and 9, Milltown Park, First Edition, Section 15, Township 57N, Range 2 West, Bonner County, Idaho. The conditions of approval as outlined by the city staff, with the conditions articulated to adjust on number 3, providing the extensions at the discretion of the city staff. And then
Go ahead and just read the paragraph that's right above it postponed.
this motion is based on the analysis and facts contained within the staff report, information presented at the hearing, and the finding that with the stated conditions, the applicant is in compliance with the 9 criteria for conditional use permit as outlined in Sandpoint City Code, Section 996 Alpha 3H, and that the staff has followed the notice procedures applicable to condition use permits contained in Idaho Code 67-6512 and Sandpoint City Code Title 9, Chapter 9.
I second.
We will take a roll call vote. Okay. We start with Commissioner Dunkel.
Yes.
Okay. Commissioner Camp,
Yes.
Commissioner Ahmed,
Yes.
Commissioner McGrann,
Yes.
Commissioner Boyd,
Yes.
and I also vote yes to make it unanimous. Motion passes. Thank you for your time this evening. Thank you. You bet. Number 7 on our agenda is an update on discussion concerning the comprehensive plan, and I will now yield the floor to City Planner Amy Tweeten for an update on the comprehensive plan.
Mr. Chairman, so update, wish I had more than I do, but we are making progress. The land use study that was undertaken by the Leland group, the results of that will get incorporated into the comprehensive plan. The initial draft of that will be presented to council at its 15th meeting. Also, the updated strategic plan for the city will be before council at the June 15th meeting for possible adoption. And those were 2 documents that we're running concurrently with the comprehensive plan, but will get incorporated. So that timing works well. And then we are still finalizing the contract amendments with Logan Simpson. And we also anticipate that will go to council June 15th. So once that happens, we will come up with the kind of a public engagement plan moving forward. And then the consultant will be coming to some commission meetings as well. And we'll come up with a potential, if we need to schedule special meetings, we'll try to come up with a schedule for that as well.
What type of agreement is that with Logan Simpson? Is that like a lump sum, an hourly, not to exceed?
It will be a not to exceed, and it's based on different parts of the work program.
Okay.
Do commissioners have any additional questions at this time?
I have a question, Mr. Chairman.
Please.
In regards to the comp plan and my previous question regarding ADUs, I walked through an open house yesterday, 600 square feet, 1 bedroom, and I'm thinking about potential development projects. What would it take for us to have that conversation, to bring it to council, to update the ADU to allow for 2 bedrooms so we could get closer to compliance with the county? Not that we have to be in compliance, but to give property owners increased density, more options quicker, because 900 square feet with a single bedroom, you can have a very large bedroom in 900 square feet. And then that gives more people, especially as the applicant suggested, the 2 bedroom, 2 bath apartment is what people are looking for. What is the process to hasten that?
I think that needs to be part of the whole accessory building discussion that we've been having. And it's just, how quickly can we move on code amendments when we have your next 2 meetings, at least you're going to have 2 public hearings for development proposals. And we also have the comprehensive plan underway. So as much as I would like to bring forward the code amendments, it's just a timing issue.
Is there a mechanism to be able for a property owner to request a variance?
That would not be a variance eligible item, unfortunately. But
And for looking though at changes to code, can that originate from this body, from city council, from staff, from public? Can that originate from any of those sources if we're looking at changing code?
Yes, it can. But again, it's just how quickly it can.
Correct. Yes,
Yeah.
I am.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions at this time? All right. With no further business, the commission, this meeting is now adjourned at 6:44 p.m. Thank you all very much.
Thank you.